Hi, everyone, and happy Sunday. I'm Jade Lauren, aka Ashanti Ra, and I'm coming to you today to talk a little bit about something that just crossed my mind today. As some of you may know that follow me, I'm in the middle of my second book in a series of Divinity in Motion. It's called Among the Stars New Beginnings. And as I was thinking about that book today, and as I sat down, I've been writing for the last couple of weeks. And I was sitting down and I was coming into another chapter, and I was reminded about fear. And I did not know exactly why fear kept coming up, but it did. It kept coming up, and it came up again and again and again. And I thought, well, maybe there's something to this. Maybe there's something I'm supposed to say about this. And at the same time, one of the things that also surfaced around that time is the idea of compassion and the idea of selflessness. In other words, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one or the few. And so, as these two ideas started just going round and round in my head, I decided to just stop my writing and just think for a bit about that and how that may show up in fear. I know we have a lot of fear going on the planet because fear is profitable. Fear is a mechanism of control, a very absolute mechanism of control. Because when you have a person, a populace, a group in fear, which is a very, very strong emotion, they cannot think their way out of a paper bag. I'm sorry if that offends some of you. But anytime you're in a heightened state of emotion, you cannot think. Whether that emotion is fear, whether that emotion is grief, or whether it's just tremendous drama going on in your life that keeps you upset and riddled, you cannot think. You cannot think objectively. And more importantly, you can't hear. You can't hear the wisdom of your Creator. You cannot hear the wisdom of your I am presence. You can't hear anything because you're just like a hamster. You're reacting, 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 reacting. And once we're in a reactionary mode, there's just no room for anything else. We cannot move ourselves forward. We can't project ourselves. We can't come to a consensus on anything because we're just in this state of, I call it the hamster effect. The mind just goes around and around and around and it never lands. So I want to take just a minute here to talk about that fear. And oftentimes, those of you that have read any of my writings or listened to any of my talks that I've done on YouTube, you know that when I talk about fear and faith, I always put it in the context of a choice because it is. You must choose whether you're going to walk in fear or whether you're going to walk in faith. And faith really is a process. It's a process. You it's not anything that you just wake up one day and say, okay, I'm here, I've arrived. It doesn't work that way. You have to gradually learn to trust your higher power that incidentally is within you. It is not outside. And having to trust that higher power. And sometimes that's difficult because sometimes we have so many voices in our head. It's just impossible to focus on any one thing. We're just going round and round. And this is by design, I think. Because all emotions work together for good, even though it may appear at the time that it's not, it may appear at the time that we're just an emotional mess, but it really does work together for good. Every emotion has a purpose. And it's up to us to learn that purpose, to understand how that emotion relates to us. Because again, we are all unique individuals. We are unique. It doesn't matter if we've got 3 million Aries on the planet. Every Aries is unique. They're born at different times, born at different locations, born with different astrological trinities, and the list goes on and on. So we are unique. We're unique in our responses, in our social backgrounds, in our psychological backgrounds. And we're here on earth to evolve, to learn how to incorporate the positive aspects of ourselves. And this is a planet of manifestation. This is where we're learning to manifest. This is where we're learning to exercise our creative muscles. We're, as I have said in my first book, we're gods in training. And that is not to say gods in the absolute, the ultimate. No, we are not. But we are gods in training. We are learning to be the masters. Many of us that have chosen that path, let me qualify, are learning to be the masters ultimately of our own cosmic universe, galaxy, world even. And this is good training for us because we must learn, and we cannot possibly be the oversoul of even a planet until we learn how to allow, until we learn how to accept that individuals must be what they are. They must travel their path. And there are no shortcuts. We have to learn, we have to grow, we have to evolve. And I'm reminded of fear steps in because so many of us are afraid to take that next step. So many of us are afraid of what am I going to look like when I come out on the other end? I know over the last year that has been one of my large fears. I was like, well, I like myself, but I'm growing, I'm changing. I can feel the changes as they occur in myself. And I found myself actually sitting one day in my silence going, and what am I going to be when I come out the other end of this? Who am I going to be? How am I going to be expressing? What does the next level of me look like? And I have to admit, there was a great deal of fear with that, mainly because I sort of consider myself as a unicorn, a mystical, magical being, a very playful being. I love to play, I love to laugh, I love to have fun, and quite frankly, I don't take life too serious. And so I thought to myself, my goodness, if I start to, I'm starting to change, I'm starting to consciously shift my own DNA and working in that process. And I got to thinking, wow, when you finish, who's going to come out on the other end of that? And I have to admit, there was a little bit of fear going on there. And the fear started to subside as I started to complete Divinity in Motion, Book 1. When I got to evolution and when I realized just how expansive our evolution is. And then the fear started to subside because right again I remembered, but I'm an eternal being. Lifetimes upon lifetimes upon lifetimes. All things happen simultaneously. So in some aspect, I've already arrived and I'm okay, and this is a memory. And that always calms me down when I go back to that, when I go back to that realization that all time is happening simultaneously, and there is some aspect of me that is already finished its journey back into the collective, possibly the oversoul of my own galaxy. And this is just a memory of this here and now. And so I need to relax, and as the changes come to me, simply allow them to occur. Allow them to unfold. So when we look at fear, we look at, as I said, there's a lot of profit in fear. Having people afraid of their own shadows is worth millions and millions of dollars. We spend countless monies going to the theater just to allow ourselves to be scared to death. Why anybody wants to experience that consciously, I have no idea. But again, we're all different. Everything, different strokes for different folks, as they used to say back in the day. That is still applicable right here and right now. But making a choice to limit your fears, making a choice to keep that emotion, I won't say at bay, I will simply say under control. Understanding that moving more toward apprehension and away from fear, moving toward following your intuition that says, I'm not really going to be afraid here, but I'm going to pause. Let me make sure I've looked at all avenues. Let me make sure that I've got this following in the right direction. And understanding that there is a underlining current that wants to keep you in fear. Because again, when you're in fear, that's an emotion, and it is a powerful emotion, a very strong emotion. And you can control an entire group, person, race, continent through fear. And we've had countless periods in history that have told us about this and what happens when people are gripped in that emotion. And so we want to try to handle that. We want to try to understand it, not from judgment. It's not wrong, it's not good, it's not bad, it just is. And so our job, as it were, is to recognize when we're in fear, step away from it, look at what we are afraid of. Why are we afraid? Many of you know I stopped watching the news, oh my God, 40 years ago, because it serves no useful purpose. All it does is, for the most part, keep you depressed, make you afraid of your fellow man, make you think you're out of control, that you have no control, that everything is just hopeless and spiraling down. And I always say, sometimes I look at a lot of the YouTube things and I keep up with what's going on in the spiritual world, the celestial world, the world of NASA, and watching a lot of the telescopes and things like that. But I always say scientists are fatalists. They will always look for the absolute worst thing. They are the biggest doom and gloomers on the planet. And so if you're looking at anything for information, look at it for information's sake. But sort of be aware of what it is. They can never look at anything and go, this is a great possibility, without bringing in that fatalist attitude. Granted, we're not the only beings in the universe. The universe is entirely too big. I was looking at that newest telescope that we had that sent back a lot of images from way outside of our solar systems, and it was like literally universes beyond count. And I thought to myself, you can't possibly look at this and think that Earth is the only inhabited planet. You get your head out of the sand. That is just not possible. And with that, having in mind that just like on planet Earth, there are other inhabited planets out there. Some of them are benevolent, some of them not. That's okay, because I'm going to go on the faith that there are planetary protectors out there that are looking out for us, that have our backs, so to speak, and we are protected. In a lot of ways, I feel like Earth is in a cocoon so that we can evolve. And we have those planets that take care of us, those guardians that have given themselves a mandate to watch out for us, to look out for us, to take care of us. And so we can sort of rest in that and move on with our evolution, getting better and better. But just like we have some people that play in the dark on planet Earth and some people that play in the light, then I have to concede that there probably every planet out there is not going to be benevolent. But I'm going to trust that that's being handled for us until we can take care of it ourselves, until we evolve to that point. And I prefer to look at it that way. It keeps me calm, it keeps me in my joy, it keeps me continuing on my evolution path. And so I want to say that when you feel yourself going into fear, no matter what it is, question that. Find out who's talking, find out where it's coming from, and find out what your payoff is. Why do you want to be in fear? Why do you want to be afraid? Why do you want to be made to be afraid? Why do you want to experience such a jolt to your psyche and to your very body temple? Because it is a jolt. Fear is such a powerful emotion, it can actually stop your heart. So you have to ask yourself, why do you need that kind of an adrenaline rush? Maybe you do. If so, ask yourself why. What is it that is not happening in your life that makes you want to have a pinch me moment? Because that's what it is with a lot of adrenaline junkies. They don't think they're alive. It's like a pinch me. Let me do something to shock myself because that verifies for me that I'm alive. As if simply a state of being is not enough. not a judgment, just an observation and a suggestion of asking yourself, why do you need that kind of shot in the arm? And yes, life can become very ordinary. And I know with my particular astrological makeup, I cannot stand to be bored. And so when things seem to get really, really boring to me, for lack of a better word, I start to look at things to just interest me, to look at things to do, to look at maybe reading some literature that I bought a book and put it away years and years ago, and maybe it's time to bring it off the shelf and see what's going on with it. Maybe I'm now ready for it. There are things that we can do when we feel quote unquote bored. And always staying in control, because again, going back to this notion of fear, this is how the masses are controlled. And everything in the media is designed to make me and the rest of us afraid of something. My teeth are too yellow, so I need a whitening toothpaste. I'm afraid of age. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid to experience this. I've got a headache. I'm afraid to experience the headache. I'm afraid to look at why I have a headache. Oh, all of a sudden, I've got maybe a brain tumor. And there's just all these things designed to keep you going down the wrong energetic path. Instead of you stopping and thinking, move the headache out of your mind. Ask yourself why you have it. Don't automatically go to, I must have a brain tumor, something's going wrong, I've got an aneurysm or something, and just stop and think about, okay, what's going on? Maybe I'm in a lot of stress. Maybe I've been confused for too long a period of time, and my body is saying, time out. And you've got to admit that a headache is a very good time out, is it not? So, stopping and thinking sometimes about why these things are occurring, instead of automatically always running to fear. Yeah, I even look at, sometimes they have a lot of romance, and I love rom-coms, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I think about, if you're a single person and you're always looking at a rom-com or something, and you're always wondering, why am I still single? And it may be that if you were to meditate and get in touch with your higher self, you may discover that you chose to be single in this lifetime. And what would it do for you if you realized and understood that that was a choice that you made when you came into this existence? Would it not make a difference? So sometimes stop and think about why you've made the choices that you've made. Stop and think about that instead of going, there's something wrong with me. Everybody's coupled off and I'm not. I have noticed that we live in a time period where more and more and more and more people are electing to stay single. And so I think we're getting in touch with ourselves. We're starting to know that we're whole, perfect, and complete just the way we are. We don't have to have a significant other. That may be a choice that we've made. But if you automatically go into fear and start thinking there's something wrong with me, I'm single, all of my friends are married, I'm single, what's wrong with me? Why can't I attract somebody? Yaddy, yaddy, yaddy. And start thinking about, is it possible? Just a thought, is it possible? Instead of me going into fear that I'm going to be alone, is it possible that for whatever work I decided to do in this lifetime, I did not want to be distracted with family? Stop and think about that. Because sometimes that is a decision that we have made. And we forget, when we come into the planet and we focus in this particular life expression, we forget a lot of the things that we knew, a lot of the decisions that we made. It's why it's so very important to keep a lid on your emotions. Yes, experience your joy, experience the wonderfulness of compassion and love and all of that positive energy, and keep the negative energy in perspective. Sometimes it's a person that we know. One of the hardest things I've ever had to do is remove people from my life, because I don't have a large amount of people rambling around in my life to begin with, not close knit. I'm very, very selective about the people that are involved in my close knit. And because of that, sometimes I'll have blinders on with someone that needs to go. Not because they're necessarily negative. Sometimes it's because of the space they put me in. They don't do it intentionally, they're just being themselves. But then I have to start to pay attention to what happens to me when I'm always with that person, or when I'm always in connection with that person, and then things start going on in my life. It's not their fault. It's what they cause me to do, what I allow them to do, what bell they're ringing, what trigger they're ringing in me that causes me to shift and think a different way, that ultimately causes the discord. And sometimes when we find that out, we have to remove those people. Sometimes they're family members, and that can hurt. So understanding who you are, understanding what you are, understanding why you are, literally keeps your fear in perspective, because you stop worrying about being afraid of who you are and your surroundings, and you start to reconcile with those things. And as you start to, and in all things, step into light, stand in light, imagine a light that you're standing in as you're examining, as you're moving through your life experience, because that will help you stay in the higher vibrations. There are a lot of vibrations on the planet. This planet, and I imagine any other planet in the solar system, is going to have its light and its dark. And the dark has to be reconciled. And they're balanced out perfectly. And so, keeping that in mind, the next time you reach for fear, ask yourself why. Why am I going there? What does it profit me to run around in this? And remember that living on a planet with so many different energies and so many different vibrations, that when we get up in the morning, we're literally surrounded by energies of fear everywhere we go, everywhere we stop, even standing at a stoplight. There can be 20 cars at that stoplight, and I guarantee you over half of them are sitting in some kind of drama, some kind of fear, some kind of trauma that they're replaying over and over and over again. So you have to surround yourself in light. You have to understand and reconcile those fears so that you always know and keep yourself moving forward. And so, as I was writing my new book, Among the Stars, in New Beginnings, I realized that once we come out of observation and we start to experience emotions, emotions are very difficult to reconcile. And that's one of the reasons why we have them. It's one of the reasons why we leave our celestial life as we're moving forward, especially those of us that have a goal of becoming a paradise son and a goal of possibly having our own galaxies one day. We have to get a lid on what emotions are, especially if we're going to be an oversoul that's going to have an entire planet of a whole gamut of emotions. I think about Gaia sometime, which is Earth, among other names. I like Gaia. But we have the same thing with her. Every now and then there are just storms and storms and storms and hurricanes and these types of things where she is reconciling all the emotional baggage on the planet. Now, of course, she knows this. She understands this. She knows this is part of the process. But she still has to process all of our stuff. And so she does. And she does it by way of storms. Any kind of storm, you name it, from typhoons to, I always say when you get out into the open ocean, if you watch a lot of the shows where they're out into the Bering Sea and out really deep into the oceans, it's never calm. It's always just, it goes from minor turbulence to major turbulence, but it's never calm because of all of the energies on the planet, and those emotions affect her. Again, she signed up for that. She's fine with that. And that is the planet that we live on right now. And this is what she signed up for. But she has to cleanse every now and then, and every now and again it gets a tad bit much, as it does for us. So we're all celestial beings. Some of us are expressing in human form, and some of us are expressing in a planetary nature, whether we're planets circling the earth, or one of the other planets that are here, or if we're the star system observing and we've not let go yet, but we're observing and we're in the earth skies. And so even if we're at that level, we're still observing the emotions and getting ready to experience them and not just observe them. Our destinies are fantastic. This is about understanding where you are at all times. And so until another thought crosses my mind, namaste. Have a fantastic day, an awesome week, until we meet again.